Everybody wants me to relitigate January 6th. I'm not going to do that. There's a very clear distinction between the two. The people who broke the law and destroyed property met with the proper consequences on that.
We have certainly known about the Republicans being just wild, open, unabashed hypocrites. And we get examples of it all the time, but rarely do we get examples of it like these two clips that I'm getting ready to show you. Rarely is it this laid bare. Right now, there are protests in Los Angeles, peaceful protests in Los Angeles. And I say that because you've probably seen looting and store windows broken out. That takes place after peaceful protesters have gone home. Those people aren't protesting ICE, the people who break into stores and steal things and smash windows and create other chaos and damage. They're not protesting anything. Those are opportunists. I'm talking about protesters. We're witnessing this. And it is very rich listening to these Republicans pound their chest like they're brave patriots for the United States, standing with the government against these chaos agents, when we know that when they had their chance to speak out against their people who were dispatched to overthrow the United States government during the insurrection on January 6, 2021, there was crickets from the peanut gallery. They are either in too much agreement with Donald Trump or too afraid of Donald Trump and the violence that would be brought against them at his behest if they spoke out against him to say anything. It's very clear. And twice yesterday, Manu Raju from CNN, look, CNN generally terrible, worthless. However, there are several journalists that work for that particular organization that do good work, and I believe Manu Raju is one of those. He's not a Jake Tapper type. He's not a Dana Bash type. He's not a Caitlin Collins type. You see, they give the biggest cowards and the biggest traitors to the country and to their constitutional protection, they give them anchor spots. And then they fire people like Jim Acosta. But there are still a few left who are good, and I believe Manu Raju was one. He's their congressional reporter. And he asked both Mike Johnson and John Thune, the House of Representatives leader, the Speaker of the House of Representatives in line to the presidency, and the Majority Leader of the Senate, John Thune. He asked them both about the inconsistencies in the positions of the Republican Party related to the protests that are taking place now and the attempt to overthrow the United States government by Trump supporters, the armed, violent assault on our nation and our capital. And you will not believe the just wild cowardice and public hypocrisy of these two gentlemen. First, we're going to start with Mike Johnson, and he's not even good at trying to avoid the question. At least John Thune was a little bit artful. But watch dumb Mike Johnson and brace yourself for record-setting hypocrisy.
Mr. Speaker, you guys are condemning the violent protesters in LA. Is it hypocritical given the president pardoned the violent protesters on January 6th?
Look, no, I think there's a clear distinction between those two. We've seen what's happened in LA in the early 90s and in other times when these things get out of control and they burn whole city blocks down and shut the place down. You have to stay on top of that. You cannot let it get out of control. And I think federalizing the National Guard was important. I think if Marines are necessary to maintain order, we have to do what is.
So what's the difference? You said there's a distinct. What's the difference between the violent protesters on January 6th?
Everybody wants me to relitigate January 6th. I'm not going to do that. There's a very clear distinction between the two. The people who broke the law and destroyed property met with the proper consequences on that. That's what we're trying to be intellectually consistent about this.
What sort of authorities do you think the Marines should have there on the ground? What sort of authorities?
Maintain peace and protect property. They're protecting federal property and personnel, and that is a very appropriate and necessary thing to do, and I applaud the president for doing it.
Thank you, sir.
I think there's a clear distinction, he says. Pressed for what that distinction is. No, listen, I'm not going to relitigate it. The distinctions are very clear. They're clear. While, notice, the guy next to him is a Capitol Police officer who is a part of a law enforcement agency that was violently assaulted and attacked that day. He has so little respect for law enforcement, so little respect for the concept of backing the blue or the thin blue line or whatever nonsense propaganda they'd want you to believe, that he would sit there and say that with that gentleman at his shoulder, while not being able to give us what the clear distinct. If they're so fucking clear, Mike Johnson, just give us one of the clear distinctions between the attempt to overthrow the United States government and what's taking place in LA right now, which is just peaceful protests in the spirit of standing up for a marginalized and oppressed group of people and standing up to white supremacy. What's the distinction? Other than the people that are protesting the ICE raids and the mass deportation effort right now in Nazi Germany, America, they're not Trump supporters. And the people who attacked the Capitol were sent there by Donald Trump, dispatched there to try to overthrow the United States government by way of overturning a free and fair, settled American election. That's the distinction, Mike Johnson. Mr. Mighty Righteous Man of God who never would lie. Oh, he wouldn't bastardize his own faith. No, why would you believe that? He's a good and decent Christian man who shares his porn consumption with his goofy son. Monteraju had another moment talking to John Thune, asked virtually the same question about the inconsistencies, and here's that moment.
Los Angeles. Do you see any inconsistency when the president criticizes and condemns the violent Los Angeles protesters, but then pardons the violent January 6th protesters?
Well, I mean, I think the issue that's in front of us right now is the chaos in LA. And clearly the local officials there, for whatever reason, didn't seem up to the task of getting the job done there. And I think that, as Senator Wicker pointed out, it's kind of a political imperative, honestly, because one of the most fundamental questions most people, most voters ask is my family safe? Is my neighborhood safe? Is my community safe? Is my country safe? And when you can't answer that in the affirmative, then you've got a problem. And I think that's what they ran into in LA, which is why they needed some outside help. But at the end of the day, it's about preventing chaos and preserving law and order. That's what this is.
They are cowards. That is a man who is petrified of Donald Trump and the violence that he will bring upon his own family, John Thune's family, if indeed he speaks out against Donald Trump. That's not an answer to the question. The question, do you see any inconsistency when the president criticizes or condemns the violent Los Angeles protesters, but then pardons idiot traitors to our country? I'm paraphrasing. He pardons the violent January 6th protesters. They weren't protesters, they were insurrectionists, Manu. Correct you there. And the answer being, I think the issue that's in front of us right now is the chaos in LA, and then moves on. That's weakness. That's not leadership. That's not love of country. That's not patriotism. That's a cult mentality or fake-triotism, or a fake-triot cult mentality. And these are the people who are in charge. These are our leaders, providing no leadership, no patriotism, no pushback against a dictator. I often wonder, like, what's the moment, what's the point, what's the inflection point for Republicans that they're going to be, oh, this is a bridge too far. And I think there probably is one. The problem is it'll be far too late by then. In fact, I think it might be too late already, and they just don't realize it. Anyway, what do you think? I invite you to this conversation. You can talk about it in the comments. We can mix it up there. You can also call my voicemail line. Leave me a fewer than 3-minute voicemail, 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily at dollemore.com. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you're not already. If you watch my videos with any regularity, I would appreciate your subscription. It's free. Just click the subscribe button. If you want to help support with a little bit of money, that would be fantastic. $2 a month if you have it within your budget. If you are on a fixed income or on disability or retired, don't worry about it. Subscribing and liking and commenting and doing all those YouTube metric things is support enough. But if you got $2 a month that you can that you can do without, consider supporting this work or someone else on this platform. Become a channel member, go to their Patreon or mine, patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast. I love and appreciate you very much. I'll be back in studio tomorrow. A different desk. Better lighting. I'm sure I look like a goblin right now, more than I normally do. I'll see you next time. Be genuine. Take care of one another.